I don't have any doubt that there's a more elaborate, deeper, more sophisticated facility for them at this point. The Greenbrier is obsolete. The hotel is still there, and my understanding is that if you go to the Greenbrier Hotel, there is a tour that you can take. I don't know how much they charge for it, but you can actually take a public tour of this facility at this point.
Next time I get in D.C., I might, because I'm kind of interested.
Well, that's a good jaunt there from D.C., Joe. It wouldn't be in D.C. It's some ways outside of D.C.
Yeah, I thought they said it was an hour drive or something.
Oh, no, sir.
Oh, it's
You're talking about a much longer drive.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well...
to go to the Mount Weather facility, now that's about an hour's drive, but you won't get in. That's still an active facility. That's very deeply buried. It's deep, it's large, it's sophisticated. It's run by FEMA, and there you will not get in.
Here, I got one for you, Richard.
Yes.
They used to be an old civil service underground facility out near the lake in New Orleans. Well, of course, Katrina flooded it beyond belief.
Yes.
Well, what was funny about it is they cleaned the facility out, and then you know what they did? They built these big, huge, multi-million-dollar homes on top of it. It's about a mile long and a half mile wide, and all they did was build these big homes. And where they didn't build the big homes, they turned the park into it. And occasionally you'll see like an exhaust vent come out the ground.
Yes.
Every so often. I have not been in these houses, and
I'd be suspicious of those houses.
I would bet you money that you can access this tunnel from those houses.
Yes, and you have to understand, even though a lot of New Orleans and much of southern Louisiana is near to, at, or below sea level in some cases, it doesn't mean you can't have underground facilities, and here's why. Once you get down even a couple of 100 feet, you're not in that muck anymore.
No, you're not.
And you're not in the water, and so long as the entrance shaft is well sealed, you don't have to worry about flooding. That's a surface concern. And once you get down, as you may know, a lot of that region is actually underlain by a thick stratum of salt, rock salt, which goes down for thousands of feet. And you can actually excavate and tunnel very easily in salt. So it's quite possible that there could be an extensive underground labyrinth beneath New Orleans. And if you've ever traveled on the Gulf Coast or lived there, forget about what you see at sea level. Those marshes and swamps and canals don't matter, because once you get down a few hundred feet, that's totally irrelevant.
Well, we know there's one big facility here because that's where they brought George Bush doing 911, but nobody knows exactly where it is.
Well, that was at Barksdale Air Force Base.
But see, that's not where he stayed. I had a friend there. They said they took him off the base when he arose.
Yeah, okay.
So they transported him off. So they brought him somewhere, and it wasn't a military, let me rephrase it. It wasn't a military facility that we know of.
Yeah,
Put it like that.
Well, that's entirely possible, and the point is that they could have even taken him to a facility beneath the Gulf of Mexico.
Probably did.
The word I get is that there are undersea facilities not only beneath the Gulf of Mexico, but off the east coast and west coast as well. And
I told you about that time we were out there fishing and ran up on that rig out there, and they ran us off.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could see it was definitely a tube going straight down, and it wasn't a drilling tube, because I've been on enough rigs to know the difference between a drilling tube and a transport tube.
Yes.
And so it's still there today. It hasn't gone anywhere. And there's been, and I know of 3 underwater subtending bases in the Gulf. Now, these aren't underground, but they're attached to the bottom of the Gulf, some 3,800 feet down.
Yes.
And I know those are there, and they're classified, but they're not totally classified. The only reason I knew about them because I was in the Navy, but still, they're there. And, the general public don't know they're there.
No, well, of course the Russians do.
Oh, yeah, the Russians do, because they've gotten in trouble for trying to get in the Gulf to go get a look at them.
Well, they would have been able to image them either with their satellites.
Oh, yeah, now.
Or just prowl around. The Soviets and others send aircraft into the Gulf of Mexico, and so they would have been able to image those either with sonar or with other types of technology a long time ago. So it wouldn't be a secret to them, but it is to the American public.
Yeah, it is to the public.
And I have had other people tell me about these, not only facilities that are on the sea bottom, but facilities down in the bedrock beneath the seafloor. And this technology, or this technological capability, has been there for the past half century or more. So this is not new, but it's just that the public doesn't know about it. One of the things I cover in my next book is the fact that for decades, ever since the 60s, or actually since the 50s, the United States Navy has had the capability to go down 20,000 feet and work. And it's only gotten more sophisticated and more powerful in the intervening years. And not only to go down there and work, but to put personnel down there, even in the open sea at thousands of feet down. The capability far outstrips what the average person suspects it is.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I know when I was detached to the Nimitz, we had a couple of pods on board for if we had to go retrieve like downed submarines. They would never give us the official rated depth, but the depth was much deeper than what I was originally told that we could go down, and I was quite surprised by it when they were doing tests with them. I know they did tests over the Mariana Trench. I never did see how far they went down because they wouldn't let us around the equipment, but still, they were testing them, and they weren't there for shallow water testing because you can do that anywhere.
Well, they did, and I discussed this in my new book as well, Joe. The so-called DSRVs, Deep Submergence Rescue Vehicles. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. These were a smaller version than they have now. They were.
The two that were publicly discussed were the Avalon and the Mystic.
Yeah.
However, my guess is that there were others that were made and deployed secretly.
You remember the old 50-style bells we used to use?
Yes.
These were kind of shaped like that. They were much more intense. I can tell you this: the two glass ports in this were at least 9 inches thick, and it wasn't glass. I'm not sure what it was because when you tapped on it, it was something else. But you could see this thing was made to go very, very deep. Like I said,
well, in fact, you would want to have glass ports, and I'll tell you why. Under great pressure, glass becomes extremely strong. It becomes more than 20 times stronger than the strongest structural steel.
Well, it was thick, whatever it was.
Yes, so in
thick.
fact, the Navy in past decades was working on constructing submersibles completely out of glass for that reason. Because at great depth, glass becomes far stronger than steel. So if you wanted to make a craft that was going to work deep undersea, you would rather make it out of glass than steel, Joe.
It was a weird looking craft. I got to say, I thought it was the first time I've seen it. I thought it was the first time I've seen it because I hadn't seen the ports. I thought it was one of those new style radar domes we were getting and putting on the ship at the time, and just was covered. And then when they uncovered, I realized what it was. But there was 2 of them on board the USS Nimitz, and there was a wind system that came up from underneath where the hangar decks are, brought it up, and dropped them down. Now,
you mean Nimitz, the aircraft carrier?
Nimitz, the aircraft carrier. Yeah. And well, most people don't know that Nimitz also carries a portable sub on board.
I didn't.
It carries quite a few things that most people, some stuff that it carries I can't talk about because it's classified, but there's stuff that these things carry. Everybody thinks, oh, they just carry airplanes. No, they carry a marine contingency on board that most people don't realize. That on the Nimitz, there was 1,100 Marines on board.
I had no idea.
So we had that. We had different aircraft. Of course, even on the Nimitz, we even had a couple of Harriers stationed on board. Now they're being replaced with the new F-22s, but still, this is all stuff that people just don't realize. They had the 2 bell type things, and they had the 1 submarine, the mini sub, and several other things that they kept on board.
Well, listen, let me tell you that with the DSRVs, the publicly rated depth is 5,000 feet, and I assume that if they publicly say 5,000, that they really go to maybe 10 or 15 or 20 for all I know.
Yeah.
But the publicly rated depth was 5,000 feet, which I found interesting because the crush depth for most military submarines is right about at 2,000 feet.
Yeah, right about 2,400 last I heard.
Yes. So what are the extra 2,000 or 3,000 feet for?
Yeah.
Since if the crush depth for the hull of the submarines in the fleet is, even if it's 2,400 feet, why do you need to go to 5,000 feet? Because no one will still be alive anyway.
Yeah, well, you see, because they're not worried about retrieving you. They're worried about retrieving nuclear weapons and stuff. They could, and ladies and gentlemen, don't take this the wrong way, because I really do like the Navy and I enjoyed being in it, but their respect for